The envelope landed on the plastic table with a sound that somehow cut through the laughter, the music, and the sizzling of expensive steaks on the grill. Lily stared at it, her name printed in cold professional letters across the front, while around her, 50 guests continued celebrating her husband's 35th birthday like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. "Open it," Marcus said, and his voice carried that edge she'd been hearing more and more lately. Sharp, impatient, like she was wasting his valuable time just by existing. Lily's hand instinctively moved to her purse, where the pregnancy test sat wrapped in tissue paper. She'd taken it that morning, watched the 2 pink lines appear, and felt her whole world shift. She'd been planning to tell him tonight, after the guests left in private, the way these things should be shared between 2 people who supposedly loved each other. "My name is Lily Chun and I'm 32 years old. And standing in my own backyard, surrounded by people who barely knew my name, I realized I was about to become the entertainment at my husband's birthday party." She picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. The return address belonged to Whitmore and Associates, one of the most expensive law firms in the city. The kind of firm you hired when you wanted to destroy someone efficiently and completely. "Marcus, what is this?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He didn't answer, just stood there with his arms crossed, watching her with those cold gray eyes that used to look at her with warmth. Behind him, his colleagues from Sterling Tech Corporation mingled with champagne glasses, their designer clothes and practiced smiles a stark contrast to the backyard they were standing in. The backyard Lily had spent 3 days preparing, planting new flowers, setting up lights, organizing catering she couldn't really afford because Marcus had insisted his birthday party needed to reflect where he was going, not where he'd been. Her fingers found the edge of the envelope and tore it open. Legal documents. Dense paragraphs of text that blurred together until 3 words came into sharp, devastating focus. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The paper slipped from her hands and drifted to the ground like a fallen leaf. Around her, conversations started dying as people noticed something was wrong. The music kept playing, some upbeat pop song about summer and good times, grotesquely cheerful against the moment unfolding. "You're divorcing me?" Lily heard herself ask, and even to her own ears, the question sounded absurd. "At your birthday party?" "It seemed efficient," Marcus said. And there was something in his tone now, something almost satisfied. "Everyone's already here. Witnesses if we need them. Plus, I wanted to make sure you understood that this isn't a discussion. It's done." Lily had known him for 8 years. Married him 6 years ago in a small ceremony that cost more than they could afford, but that he'd insisted on because impressions matter. She'd worked 2 jobs to put him through his MBA program while he networked and built connections. She'd eaten ramen for dinner so he could take potential investors out for expensive lunches. She'd believed in him when his startup ideas failed, when his job applications got rejected, when nobody else saw what she saw in Marcus Chen. And somewhere along the way, as his career finally took off, as Sterling Tech hired him as a senior product manager, as his salary jumped from comfortable to impressive, she'd started noticing things. Small things at first. The way he'd started saying, "we less" and "I more." The way he'd stopped asking about her day. The way he'd begun introducing her at company events with a slight hesitation, like he was embarrassed. 3 weeks ago, she'd overheard him on the phone with someone, his voice low and careful. "She doesn't fit the image I'm building. You understand, right?" Dead weight. She'd told herself she must have misunderstood. Must have taken it out of context. Because surely the man she'd sacrificed everything for wouldn't talk about her like she was cargo he needed to dump overboard. But now, standing in the backyard she decorated, holding divorce papers she never saw coming, Lily understood that she hadn't misunderstood anything at all. "Marcus, we need to talk about this in private," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, trying to maintain some dignity in front of all these watching eyes. "No," he said it flatly. "I'm tired of private conversations with you. Tired of you trying to negotiate, trying to make me feel guilty about outgrowing what we had. This is cleaner." One of his colleagues, a blonde woman in a power suit named Jessica, stepped forward with a concerned expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Marcus, maybe this isn't the best time. It's the perfect time," he interrupted. Then he looked directly at Lily, and what she saw in his face made her stomach drop. He wasn't angry. He wasn't conflicted. He was enjoying this. You've been holding me back for years, Lily, playing the supportive wife while watching me succeed. But the truth is, you were never going to be able to keep up. Look at you. His gesture encompassed her completely. Her simple dress from Target that she'd worn specifically because he'd mentioned he wanted the party to be casual and authentic. Her lack of expensive jewelry. Her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail because she'd spent all morning cooking food that most of these guests wouldn't even eat. Look at where I am now, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger, more confident. Director level at Sterling Tech. Headhunters calling me weekly. I'm about to close a deal that'll put me in charge of a $50 million product line. And you're, what? A substitute teacher making $32,000 a year? Still driving that 2008 Honda? Still shopping at discount stores? Each word landed like a physical blow. Lily felt her face burning, felt dozens of eyes on her, felt her throat closing up with humiliation and rage, and something that felt horribly like shame. I supported you, she whispered. When you had nothing, when nobody believed in you. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could, and I appreciated it. Marcus cut her off. I really did. But appreciation doesn't mean I owe you my entire future. You were useful then, you're not useful now. It's really that simple. The pregnancy test in her purse seemed to pulse like a second heartbeat. She thought about the baby growing inside her. Thought about telling him right here, right now, in front of all these people. Would it change anything? Would he care? But looking at his face, at the cold calculation in his eyes, Lily realized with absolute certainty that it wouldn't matter. Might even make things worse. He'd see a child the same way he now saw her. As an obstacle. As dead weight. Sign the papers, Marcus said. My lawyer's being generous with the settlement. $20,000 and you keep your car. That's more than fair considering you brought nothing to this marriage financially. Nothing financially, Lily repeated, and something in her voice made a few people shift uncomfortably. Just everything else. For just a second, something flickered across Marcus's face, but then it was gone, replaced by that same cold dismissal. The papers give you 30 days to move out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He turned away, turning his back on her literally and figuratively, and gestured to the guests. Sorry about the interruption, everyone. Let's get back to celebrating. DJ turned the music up. And just like that, the party resumed. People who'd been watching the destruction of her marriage with morbid fascination now turned back to their conversations, their drinks, their networking. As if nothing had happened. As if Lily wasn't still standing there with divorce papers at her feet and a secret in her purse that would change everything. She bent down slowly and picked up the documents. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had shifted inside her in the last 5 minutes. Something that felt like the moment before a storm breaks. She looked at Marcus, who was now laughing with Jessica, his hand resting casually on the small of the other woman's back. Oh, so that's how it was. Lily carefully folded the divorce papers and slipped them back into the envelope. Then she picked up her purse, feeling the weight of the pregnancy test inside, and walked toward the house. Not running. Not crying. Just walking with her head up and her spine straight, even though every step felt like moving through concrete. Behind her she heard someone whisper, God, that was brutal. And someone else responded, yeah, but honestly, he's going places. She would have just slowed him down. Lily kept walking. Through the kitchen she'd spent hours cleaning. Past the hallway lined with photos of their life together. Photos that suddenly looked like evidence of a crime. Into their bedroom that would soon be just his bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Clear and undeniable. She was pregnant with the child of a man who had just publicly destroyed her because she wasn't useful anymore. But as she sat there in the quiet, away from the laughter and music filtering in from the backyard, Lily felt something unexpected rising in her chest. Not despair. Not defeat. Rage. Pure, burning, clarifying rage. She pulled out her phone and opened her photos. Scrolled back through months of images.
Found what she was looking for. Screenshots, emails, text messages.
Evidence she'd been collecting almost unconsciously over the past few months as Marcus's behavior had grown stranger, more secretive. Lily looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room. At 32 years old, with a baby growing inside her, and a marriage dissolving in the backyard, she was supposed to feel broken. Instead, she felt something else entirely. She felt dangerous. And if this story of betrayal, humiliation, and the kind of cruelty that happens when good people love the wrong person has grabbed your attention, stick around because what happened next at that birthday party would make national news, cost Marcus everything he'd worked for, and prove that sometimes the biggest mistake a man can make is underestimating the woman who knows all his secrets. Lily stayed in the bedroom for exactly 7 minutes. She knew because she watched the clock on the nightstand, the same clock that had woken her up every morning for the past 6 years, tick forward while she sat there holding the pregnancy test and thinking about patterns. Marcus had always been good at patterns, at reading situations and adjusting his behavior accordingly. When they'd first met, he'd been a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams and empty pockets. Back then, he'd been attentive, grateful, loving. He'd thanked her every single day for believing in him. She remembered the exact moment she'd fallen in love with him. 3 months into dating, he'd shown up at her apartment at midnight with tears in his eyes because his second startup had failed. He'd sat on her couch and said, "I'm going to make something of myself, Lily. I promise you. And when I do, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret believing in me."
She'd believed him. What an idiot she'd been.
The bedroom door opened without a knock. Marcus walked in, his tie loosened, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand. The party was still going outside, but apparently he'd decided to come check on her. Make sure she was properly destroyed, probably. "You need to leave," he said, not even bothering with preamble.
"You're embarrassing me by hiding in here.
People are asking questions." Lily carefully set the pregnancy test back in her purse and zipped it closed. "What kind of questions?" "Whether you're okay, whether the first was too harsh." He took a sip of whiskey. "I told them you understood.
That we'd been planning this for months, and you were fine with it." "You told them we'd been planning this?"
Lily stood up slowly. "You told them I agreed to be served divorce papers at your birthday party?" Marcus shrugged. "I said it was mutual. That we'd grown apart, very civilized, very modern."
"I'm not going to let you paint me as the bad guy here, Lily. I have a reputation to maintain." There it was.
That word. Reputation. Everything always came back to that. "When did you start sleeping with Jessica?" The question came out calm, almost conversational.
Marcus didn't even flinch. "That's not relevant. 3 months ago, 6 months? Was it before or after you told me we should start trying for a baby?"
That got a reaction. His jaw tightened. "I never said that." "Yes, you did." Lily pulled out her phone and started scrolling. March 15th. We were at dinner. "You said, and I quote, 'Maybe it's time we think about starting a family. It would be good for my image at Sterling.
Show I'm stable, committed.' I recorded it because I was so happy."
I wanted to remember the moment. She turned the phone around, pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room, exactly as she'd described, talking about a baby like it was a career strategy. His face darkened. "You recorded me?" "I recorded a lot of things," Lily said quietly.
Funny thing about being invisible to someone. They stop watching what they say around you.
"Stop being careful." For the first time since he'd walked into the bedroom, Marcus looked uncertain. "What are you talking about?" Lily opened her photos again. Scrolled to a screenshot dated 2 months ago. An email from Marcus to Jessica, sent at 2 in the morning. The subject line read, "Exit strategy." She read it aloud. "Jessica, I know we agreed to wait until after the promotion,
but I think we need to accelerate the timeline.
Lily's becoming suspicious, and I can't risk her making a scene before the Sterling acquisition closes. She has no idea how much the stock options are worth. If I file for divorce now, before the acquisition is announced, she settle for nothing. By this time next year, those options will be worth close to $2 million. I just need to make sure she's gone before anyone figures that out." The whiskey glass in Marcus's hand trembled slightly. Where did you get that? You left your email open on the home computer. 3 times. I started taking screenshots. She swiped to another image. Here's another good one. You and Jessica discussing which assets to hide. You planning to transfer money to your brother's account so it wouldn't show up in the divorce settlement. You strategizing how to make me look unstable if I fought back. Marcus set the glass down with a sharp click. Those are private communications. So was our marriage. Didn't stop you from ending it in front of 50 people. Lily's voice remained steady, but inside, her heart was racing. Here's what's interesting, though. All this planning, all this strategy. And you still chose to serve me papers today. At your birthday party. Why? What changed? He didn't answer, but his eyes flickered toward her purse. Toward where the pregnancy test was hidden? Oh, Lily said slowly. You know I'm pregnant. Marcus's silence was confirmation enough. How long have you known? I saw the test this morning, he admitted. In the bathroom trash. You'd wrapped it in tissue paper, but not well enough. He picked up his whiskey again, drained it. That's why I moved up the timeline. I needed you served before you could tell me officially. Before you could try to use it as leverage. Lily felt like she'd been punched. Leverage? We're talking about your child. No, we're talking about 18 years of child support that would drain my accounts and tie me to you. Forever. Marcus's voice was cold, clinical. This way is cleaner. You're served. The papers clearly state no children. If you come back later claiming you were pregnant when I filed, my lawyers will argue you concealed it, which voids any additional claims. You're insane. I'm practical. He straightened his tie, his mask sliding back into place. And I'm going back to my party. You have 30 days to clear out your things. Don't try to contest the settlement, Lily. You'll lose, and you'll waste whatever little money you have on legal fees. Take the $20,000, move on with your life, and let me move on with mine. He walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Lily. If you're thinking about making some kind of scene out there, about telling people you're pregnant or showing them those screenshots, don't. I have 50 witnesses who will testify that I ended our marriage respectfully and generously. Anything you do now will just make you look desperate and vindictive. Nobody likes a bitter ex-wife. The door closed behind him. Lily heard his footsteps retreating down the hall, heard him greeting guests with that charming laugh he'd perfected over the years. She sat back down on the bed and looked at her phone. At the screenshots she'd shown him, and the dozens more she hadn't. Evidence of affair. Evidence of financial manipulation. Evidence of calculated cruelty. But Marcus was right about one thing. Going to those guests wouldn't help. They were his colleagues, his connections. They'd side with him because that's what people did. They sided with power. Lily needed something bigger. Something that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Nina Rodriguez. Saw Marcus's Instagram story from the party. You okay? Call me. Nina. God, she'd been so focused on surviving that she'd forgotten Nina existed. Nina, who worked as a paralegal at Henderson and Associates. Nina, who had told her 6 months ago, Lily, I love you, but your husband is acting weird. If you ever need legal help, you come to me first. Not some random lawyer. Me? Promise? Lily's fingers moved across the screen. Can you come over? Now? I need help. Real help. The response came back in seconds. On my way. 20 minutes. Lily stood up and looked at herself in the mirror again. Her eyes were dry now. Clear. She thought about the baby growing inside her. Thought about Marcus calculating her worth in dollars and deciding she wasn't worth the investment. He'd made a mistake tonight. A big one. He'd shown her exactly who he was. And more importantly, he'd shown her what he was hiding. $2 million in stock options. Hidden assets. A timeline that depended on her signing away her rights before she understood what they were worth. Marcus thought he was 10 steps ahead. Thought he'd planned everything perfectly. But he'd forgotten something crucial. Lily Chun hadn't survived 8 years with him by being stupid. She'd survived by being observant. By paying attention. By remembering everything.
And unlike Marcus, who saw people as tools to be used and discarded, Lily had spent those 8 years building real relationships, making real friends, earning real loyalty. Through the window, she could hear the party reaching its peak, Marcus's voice rising above the crowd, telling some story that had everyone laughing. Playing the role of successful, ambitious, admirable Marcus Chen, Lily picked up her phone and started making a list. Not of emotions, not of complaints. A list of evidence, a list of allies, a list of steps. Because Marcus had taught her something valuable over the years, even if he hadn't meant to. He taught her that reputation was everything. That image was power. That the right story, told to the right people at the right time, could make or break a career. He'd just never considered that she might use those lessons against him. 20 minutes later, Nina knocked on the door. Lily let her in, and her friend's face immediately shifted from concern to something harder when she saw the divorce papers on the bed. "Tell me everything," Nina said. "And I mean everything." So Lily did. The party. The papers. The pregnancy. The emails. The hidden money. The timeline. All of it. When she finished, Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Lily, honey, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Nina said. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And whatever you do, don't tell him about the baby officially. Not yet. Why not? Because the second you do, his lawyers will adjust their strategy. Right now, they think you're defeated and desperate. They think you'll take the scraps and disappear." Nina pulled out her own phone. "Let them think that. Meanwhile, we're going to build a case that will destroy him in ways he can't even imagine. Can we actually do that?" Nina's smile widened. "Lily, you have screenshots of him discussing asset concealment. That's fraud. You have proof he knew about the pregnancy and deliberately timed the divorce to avoid responsibility. That's calculated abandonment. And those stock options he thinks he's hiding? Community property. You're entitled to half. He said I'd lose if I fought. He's lying. And more importantly, he's underestimating you." Nina squeezed her hand. "That's his biggest mistake." Through the bedroom door, they could hear the party winding down. Guests saying goodbye. Marcus thanking them for coming, his voice warm and gracious. And Lily sat there, 6 weeks pregnant with evidence on her phone and fury in her chest, and began to understand that sometimes the worst day of your life is just the beginning of someone else's complete destruction. The party ended at midnight. Lily watched from the bedroom window as the last guests filtered out, their laughter echoing down the quiet suburban street. Marcus stood by the front gate, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, playing the role of gracious host until the very end. When the final car pulled away, he didn't come back inside. Instead, he got into his Mercedes and drove off into the night, probably to Jessica's place. "Good," Nina said from behind her. "That gives us time to work." Over the next 3 hours, they systematically documented everything in the house that might be useful. Nina photographed financial documents Marcus had left in his home office, statements showing transfers to his brother's account, investment portfolios he'd never mentioned to Lily. They downloaded his computer files to an external drive. He'd never changed the password from their wedding anniversary, which would have been touching if it wasn't so pathetic. By 3 in the morning, they had enough evidence to bury him 6 times over. "Get some sleep," Nina said as she packed up. "Tomorrow we start building the real case." And Lily, don't let him see you sweat. Act defeated. Act like you're going to sign. The more confident he gets, the sloppier he'll become. After Nina left, Lily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her stomach. 6 weeks pregnant. In 30 days, she'd be homeless, broke, and raising a child alone. Unless she fought back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, staying at a hotel tonight. "Don't wait up." Not even bothering to hide it anymore. She typed back, "Okay. Simple, compliant, exactly what he expected." His response came immediately. "Also, I need you to sign the papers by Friday. My lawyer wants this moving forward." Friday. 3 days away. "I'll think about it," she wrote. "Don't think.
Sign. It's not complicated. Lily turned off her phone without responding. Monday morning arrived with rain drumming against the windows. Lily called in sick to the school where she worked, then drove across town to Henderson and Associates, where Nina had arranged an emergency consultation with her boss. Robert Henderson was 63 years old with silver hair and the kind eyes of someone who'd seen every variation of human cruelty and somehow maintained faith in justice anyway. He listened to Lily's story without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Chun," he finally said. "Your husband is committing multiple forms of fraud. The hidden assets alone constitute marital deception. The timing of this divorce, combined with his knowledge of your pregnancy, demonstrates malicious intent. And these emails Nina showed me about concealing the stock options? That's potentially criminal. Can we prove it in court?" "We can do better than that." Henderson pulled out a fresh legal pad. "We can make him settle before it ever gets to court. Because here's what your husband doesn't understand. The moment this goes public, Sterling Tech's legal department will distance themselves from him faster than you can blink. No corporation wants an executive who commits fraud in his personal life. Makes them wonder what he's doing with company assets." Lily felt something loosen in her chest. "So what do we do?" "First, we file a response to his petition. We don't just contest, we obliterate. We list every hidden asset, every lie, every act of deception. We demand full financial discovery, which means he'll have to reveal everything under penalty of perjury." Henderson smiled. "Men like your husband, they're used to controlling the narrative. The second they lose that control, they panic. He said I couldn't afford to fight him. He's counting on that. But here's something else he doesn't know. I'm taking your case pro bono." Lily's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of watching wealthy men destroy their families and walk away richer for it. And because Nina here," he nodded at her friend, "tells me you're a fighter who just needs the right weapons." He slid a contract across the desk. "So let's give you those weapons." Lily signed without hesitation. Tuesday afternoon, Marcus came home to pack more of his belongings. Lily was in the kitchen making tea when he walked in, and the contempt on his face was so naked it actually hurt to see. "You're still here," he said, like she was a stain that should have vanished. "I live here. For 27 more days." He dropped his briefcase on the counter. "Did you sign the papers?" "Not yet. I'm reading through them carefully." Marcus's jaw tightened. "There's nothing to read. It's standard divorce language." "Sign it, Lily. Stop dragging this out." "Your lawyer said I had 30 days to respond." "It's only been 3. My lawyer was being generous with the timeline." "I'm not." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "I'm having Jessica's brother, who's a notary, come by tomorrow morning. You're going to sign then." "Or what?" The question seemed to surprise him. Marcus looked up from his phone, studying her like she was a puzzle that had suddenly become complicated. "Or I make things difficult for you," he said slowly. "I know where you work, Lily. I know the principal at Roosevelt Elementary. We play golf together. One conversation about my unstable ex-wife, who might not be fit to be around children, and you'd try to get me fired?" Lily's hands tightened around her tea mug. "For not signing fast enough." "I'd do whatever it takes to move forward with my life." He pocketed his phone. "You're not important enough to slow me down." "You never were." He walked upstairs to the bedroom. Lily stood in the kitchen, listening to him move around above her, and pulled out her own phone. Opened the voice memo app. Stopped the recording she'd started the moment he walked in the door. Marcus's threat, captured in crystal clear audio. She sent the file to Nina with a single word. "More evidence." When Marcus came back down 30 minutes later with a suitcase full of clothes, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, apparently reading through the divorce papers. "Good girl," he said, seeing the documents. "You're finally being smart about this." She didn't look up. Just kept reading, pen in hand, looking every bit like a woman who was preparing to surrender. Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and smiled. "It's the headhunter about the VP position." "I need to take this." He walked out to the backyard, his voice bright and eager as he talked about salary expectations and equity packages and when he could start. The moment he was out of sight, Lily opened her laptop. Went to Marcus's cloud storage account still logged in from last week. Found a folder labeled Sterling Acquisition Confidential. She downloaded everything. Wednesday morning, Lily sat in Henderson's office again while he reviewed the new evidence. "This just keeps getting better," he murmured, scrolling through the Sterling files. "Your husband has access to non-public information about a corporate acquisition. Information that, if leaked, would constitute insider trading violations. I'm not trying to send him to prison," Lily said quietly. "I just want what's fair." "I know. But he needs to understand that you could. That you have the power to destroy him completely." Henderson closed the laptop. "That's leverage. That's how we negotiate. When do we tell him?" "Soon. But first, we need one more piece." He handed her a document. "This is a pregnancy verification from your doctor. Official. Dated. Notarized. It proves conclusively that you were pregnant when he filed for divorce, and that he knew it. Combined with his emails about timing the divorce to avoid financial responsibility, this demonstrates deliberate fraud." Lily took the document. Saw her name, the date, the confirmation of pregnancy. 6 weeks, 2 days. "There's something else," Henderson said carefully. "I need to ask you something difficult. Are you planning to keep the baby?" The question hung in the air. Lily looked down at the paper, at the medical proof of the life growing inside her. "Yes," she said firmly. "This baby didn't ask to have Marcus as a father, but she have me. And I'm going to fight for her future, even if he won't." Henderson nodded, satisfied. "Then we have everything we need. I'm filing our response today. By tomorrow morning, your husband will receive a document that outlines every asset he tried to hide, every lie he told, and every law he potentially broke. And then we wait for him to panic." Thursday morning, Lily was at the grocery store when her phone exploded with notifications. Text after text from Marcus, each one more furious than the last. "What the hell did you do? My lawyer just got your response. Are you insane? You're going to regret this. Call me. Now." She ignored them all. Kept shopping, filling her cart with healthy food for the pregnancy, prenatal vitamins, fresh vegetables. Things she'd been too broke to buy before but that Henderson had advanced her money for. Her phone rang. Marcus. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. Finally, a text from a different number. "Jessica, you need to back off. Marcus is losing his mind. Whatever you think you're doing, it's not going to work. He's too connected, too powerful. You're just embarrassing yourself." Lily stared at the message for a long moment. Then she replied, "Tell Marcus that if he wants to talk, he can contact my attorney. Otherwise, I'll see him in court." She blocked Jessica's number and finished her shopping. That night, Nina came over with takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider. "Henderson called me," Nina said, grinning. "Marcus's lawyer contacted him 3 times today trying to negotiate. They're scared, Lily. Really scared." "What did Henderson say?" "He said no negotiations until we get full financial disclosure. Every account, every asset, every stock option. He wants Marcus squirming." Nina poured them both glasses of cider. "Oh, and apparently Marcus tried calling Sterling's legal department to complain about you. Said you were harassing him." Lily's stomach dropped. "What did they say?" "They told him his personal divorce wasn't their concern. And if he wanted to use company resources to fight his ex-wife, he should consider whether that was appropriate behavior for someone at his level." Nina's grin widened. Translation: They're already distancing themselves. They smell trouble. For the first time in days, Lily felt herself smile. Actually smile. "There's one more thing," Nina said, her expression turning serious. "Henderson wants to take the offensive. He wants to schedule a mediation session for next week. Get Marcus and his lawyer in a room, present all the evidence, and make them an offer they can't refuse." "What kind of offer?" 60% of all marital assets, including the stock options. Full child support based on his real income,
not the reduced number he reported. And a non-disparagement clause that prevents him from ever talking badly about you in public or professional settings. Nino leaned forward. It's aggressive. It's more than most women get in divorces. But Henderson thinks we can get it because Marcus can't risk this going public. Lily thought about the baby growing inside her. Thought about the future she needed to build. Thought about Marcus's face when he'd handed her those papers at his birthday party, so confident in his cruelty. Let's do it, she said. They clinked their glasses together. And through the window, Lily could see storm clouds gathering on the horizon, dark and heavy with the promise of rain. But inside she felt nothing but clarity. The mediation was scheduled for Tuesday morning at Henderson and Associates conference room. Lily arrived 30 minutes early, wearing a simple navy dress that Nina had helped her pick out. Professional but not trying too hard. Pregnant but not obviously, so not yet. Henderson was already there, his briefcase open, documents organized in neat stacks across the table. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, Lily admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He gestured to the chair at the head of the table. You sit here. Power position. When Marcus walks in, I want him to see you first, centered, calm. It'll throw him off. At 9 o'clock exactly, the conference room door opened. Marcus walked in first, and Lily almost didn't recognize him. His suit was impeccable as always, but his face looked haggard. Dark circles under his eyes. Jaw tight with tension. Behind him came his attorney Gerald Whitmore, a man in his 50s with a kind of expensive watch that cost more than Lily's annual salary. Marcus's eyes found Lily immediately, and the hatred in them was so pure it actually made her flinch. But she didn't look away, didn't shrink. Just met his gaze steadily until he was the one who broke contact. Let's make this quick, Whitmore said, setting his briefcase down with a thud. My client has a meeting at Sterling in 2 hours. Then we'll be efficient, Henderson replied smoothly. He slid a document across the table. This is our settlement proposal. I suggest you review it carefully before responding. Whitmore picked it up. His eyes scanned the first page, and Lily watched his expression shift from confident to concerned to something close to alarm. This is absurd, he said flatly. You're demanding 60% of marital assets? That's not how California law works. It is when one party has deliberately concealed assets and committed fraud. Henderson pulled out another document. Exhibit A. Emails between Mr. Chen and his current girlfriend discussing strategies to hide money from his wife. Exhibit B. Financial transfers to his brother's account, clearly designed to make assets appear as debts. Exhibit C. Stock options from Sterling Tech that Mr. Chen failed to disclose, currently valued at approximately $1.8 million. Marcus's face had gone pale. Those are private communications. They're evidence of fraud, Henderson corrected. And they're admissible in court. As are these. He laid out another stack of papers. Text messages between you and Miss Brennan discussing the timeline of your divorce. Note the date here. This is you acknowledging you saw your wife's pregnancy test and decided to accelerate the divorce filing to avoid financial responsibility for the child. You can't prove I saw anything, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its edge. Your text says, and I quote, saw something in the bathroom this morning. We need to move faster than we planned. I'll have the papers drawn up today. Henderson looked up calmly. Ms. Brennan responds, are you sure? And you reply, I can't risk 18 years of child support. Better to be divorced before she can claim anything. Does that refresh your memory? The silence in the room was deafening. Whitmore had gone very still, reading through the exhibits with growing horror. When he looked up at Marcus, there was something new in his expression. Not just concern. Anger. Marcus, he said quietly, did you tell me you had no knowledge of pregnancy when we filed? Marcus didn't answer. Because if you lied to me, if you deliberately withheld information that affects the legal strategy, then I can't represent you. That's fraud on the court. I didn't lie, Marcus said quickly. I suspected. That's different from knowing. You literally texted about seeing the test. Whitmore snapped. That's knowledge? He turned to Henderson. I need a moment alone with my client. Of course. Henderson stood. We'll give you the room. Outside in the hallway, Nina was waiting with coffee. Lily's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the cup. You're doing amazing, Nina whispered. Did you see Marcus's face? He looks like he's going to be sick. His lawyer looks worse, Lily said. Henderson checked his watch. They'll need at least 10 minutes to regroup. Whitmore's probably explaining right now that they can't win this case. That going to trial would mean all of this becomes public record, which would destroy Marcus's reputation and career. Will he settle? He doesn't have a choice. The question is whether he'll accept our terms or try to negotiate. Henderson smiled. Either way, we've already won. 15 minutes later, they were called back into the conference room. Marcus sat slumped in his chair, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Whitmore looked like a man who'd just been told his retirement fund had vanished. We're prepared to negotiate, Whitmore said carefully. But 60% is unreasonable. We'll agree to a 50-50 split of disclosed assets and child support based on current income. No, Henderson said simply. Excuse me? You're not hearing me. This isn't a negotiation. This is an offer. Your client committed fraud. He deliberately concealed assets and timed this divorce to avoid his parental obligations. If this goes to trial, he loses everything. His job, his reputation, possibly his freedom if the AA decides to prosecute the fraud charges. You're bluffing, Marcus said, but his voice cracked on the words. Am I? Henderson pulled out his phone, pulled up an email, and turned it around. This is from Sterling Tech's chief legal officer, sent to me this morning after I informed them that their senior product manager is involved in a divorce case, featuring potential financial fraud. They're very interested in the details, particularly the part where you accessed confidential acquisition information and discussed it with your girlfriend, who works for a competing firm. Marcus's face went from pale to gray. That's privileged information. You can't share that with Sterling. I didn't share it. I simply informed them that questions about your conduct might arise in court proceedings. They requested copies of all relevant documents. Henderson leaned forward. Marcus, let me be very clear. If we go to trial, all of this becomes public. Every email, every text, every lie. Your colleagues will read about how you abandoned your pregnant wife. Your investors will learn about the hidden assets. Sterling's board will discover you've been sharing confidential information with competitors. Your entire carefully constructed image will collapse. That's blackmail, Marcus hissed. No, that's consequences. Henderson slid the settlement agreement across the table again. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign this. You're going to give Lily 60% of all marital assets, including the stock options. You're going to pay child support based on your actual income, which includes projected bonuses and stock compensation. And you're going to sign a non-disparagement clause that prevents you from ever speaking negatively about Lily in any context, public or private, and if I refuse, then we file everything with the court tomorrow. Every piece of evidence, every act of fraud, and I personally deliver copies to Sterling Tech, to the State Bar since you'll likely need legal representation for the criminal fraud charges, and to every business publication in California. Henderson's voice was calm, almost friendly. Your entire career, destroyed because you were too cheap and too cruel to treat your wife with basic human decency. The room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Marcus looked at Whitmore. His lawyer wouldn't meet his eyes. You can't do this, Marcus said, but he was talking to Lily now, not Henderson. I built everything. The money, the career, the life, you were just there. You don't deserve any of it. For the first time since the mediation began, Lily spoke. I was there, she agreed. Her voice was quiet but steady. I was there working 2 jobs so you could attend networking events. I was there eating ramen so you could take investors to expensive dinners. I was there supporting your dreams while sacrificing my own. And when you succeeded, when you finally got everything you wanted, you looked at me and decided I was worthless. She stood up, placing both hands on the table, leaning forward so Marcus had no choice but to look at her. But here's what you forgot, Marcus. I know everything.
I know every password, every account, every secret. Because you stopped seeing me. You thought I was furniture, something that just existed in the background of your important life. And that was your biggest mistake. Marcus's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Sign the papers, Lily said. Take the deal. Because if you don't, I will make sure everyone knows exactly who you are behind that expensive suit and that charming smile. And if you're wondering whether I have more evidence than what we've shown you today, she smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Trust me. I do. She sat back down. Henderson pushed a pen across the table. For a long moment, Marcus just stared at it. Then with shaking hands, he picked it up. Marcus, I strongly advise, Whitmore began. Give me the papers. Marcus cut him off. He signed. Every page. Every clause. Every admission. When it was done, he threw the pen down and stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You'll regret this, he said to Lily. When that baby comes and you're struggling alone, when you realize how hard it is, you'll wish you'd just taken the 20,000 and disappeared. Maybe, Lily said. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Can you say the same? Marcus's face twisted with rage. For a second, Lily thought he might actually lunge across the table. But Whitmore grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. We're done here, Whitmore said. You'll receive copies of the signed agreement by end of business today. The door slammed behind them. The conference room fell silent. Then Nina let out a whoop of victory and threw her arms around Lily. You did it. Oh my God, you actually did it. Lily stood there, still processing what had just happened. She'd won. She'd actually won. Henderson was gathering papers, a satisfied smile on his face. Mrs. Chen, I've been practicing law for 38 years. That was one of the most satisfying mediations I've ever witnessed. What happens now? Now? The agreement gets filed with the court. The asset transfer begins. You'll receive your settlement within 30 days. He handed her a folder. And this is the child support order. Based on Marcus's actual income, you'll receive $4,500 per month, plus half of all medical expenses. $4,500 a month. Lily's mind struggled to process the number. That was more than she currently made in salary. He'll try to reduce it later, Henderson warned. Men like Marcus always do. But we have the agreement in writing, signed and notarized. And with the non-disparagement clause, if he badmouths you to anyone, colleagues, friends, future partners, he's in violation and faces penalties. Lily looked down at her hands. At the wedding ring, she was still wearing out of habit. She pulled it off and set it on the conference table. I don't need this anymore, she said. And if this story of standing up to a man who thought you were worthless, of fighting back when everyone expected you to fold, has kept you watching this far, then you already understand why some stories need to be told, because they remind us that power isn't about money or status. It's about refusing to accept someone else's definition of your worth. Outside, through the conference room windows, Lily could see the city spread out below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably calling Jessica, probably raging about what had just happened, probably planning his next move. But for the first time in months, Lily felt like she could breathe. 3 months after the mediation, Lily stood in the doorway of her new apartment. Not luxury, nothing like the house she'd shared with Marcus, but clean and safe with 2 bedrooms in a decent neighborhood. The first bedroom was hers. The second was painted a soft yellow, ready for the baby who would arrive in 4 months. The settlement money had come through exactly as Henderson promised. After legal fees and setting aside money for the baby, Lily had enough to breathe without panic for the first time in years. But money wasn't the biggest change. The biggest change was the absence of fear. She didn't wake up anymore wondering what mood Marcus would be in, what criticism he'd level at her, what new way he'd find to make her feel small. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mina. Turn on channel 7, now. Lily grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news. A reporter stood outside Sterling Tech's headquarters, microphone in hand. Sources confirm that Marcus Chen, former senior product manager, has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into potential conflicts of interest
and misuse of confidential company information. The investigation was launched after documents surfaced during Chen's divorce proceedings that raised questions about his conduct. The screen cut to a statement from Sterling's spokesperson. Sterling Tech takes ethical violations seriously. We're cooperating fully with all relevant authorities to determine the facts of this matter. Lily's phone rang immediately. Nina, did you see it? I'm watching it now. Henderson didn't send anything to Sterling, Nina said quickly. Marcus's own lawyer did. Whitmore was so angry about being lied to that he reported Marcus to the company himself. Said he couldn't ethically represent someone who'd committed fraud and then tried to cover it up. Lily sat down slowly on her new couch. So Marcus is destroyed. Professionally destroyed. Sterling will fire him quietly to avoid scandal, but everyone in the industry will know why. His career in tech is finished. Nina paused. How do you feel? Lily thought about it. She'd expected to feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. I feel like I survived something that should have killed me, she said quietly. And I'm still here. You're more than still here, Lily. You're thriving. After they hung up, Lily walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably calling lawyers, calling contacts, trying to salvage what was left of his reputation. But that wasn't her problem anymore. 2 weeks later, Lily ran into Jessica at a coffee shop near Roosevelt Elementary. It was pure accident. Lily had stopped for tea after work, and there was Jessica, sitting alone in a corner booth, staring at her phone with an expression of misery. For a moment, Lily considered leaving. But then Jessica looked up and their eyes met, and there was no avoiding it. Lily, Jessica said. Her voice was flat, defeated. Jessica. An awkward silence stretched between them. Then Jessica gestured to the empty seat across from her. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Against her better judgment, Lily sat. Jessica looked different. The polished corporate sheen was gone. She wore sweatpants and a hoodie, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I'm sorry, Jessica said abruptly. For all of it. For the affair, for the texts. For being part of his plan to screw you over. Okay, Lily said. Because what else was there to say? He told me you were separated. That the divorce was mutual. That you'd moved on months ago. Jessica laughed bitterly. I actually believed him. Right up until that mediation. Why are you telling me this? Because he did the same thing to me. Jessica's hands tightened around her coffee cup. 2 weeks after Sterling put him on leave, he broke up with me. Said I was tainted by association, and being with me would hurt his chances of career recovery. He actually used those words. Tainted. Lily felt a flash of something that might have been pity. I'm sorry. Don't be. I deserved it. I helped him hurt you. Jessica looked up, and her eyes were red. But I wanted you to know something. Last week, Marcus called me drunk, started ranting about how you destroyed him, how you'd taken everything. And the first told him. I told him he destroyed himself, that you just refused to let him get away with it. What did he say? He hung up on me. But before he did, I heard something in his voice. Fear. Real fear. Because for the first time in his life, his charm and his connections and his money couldn't fix what he'd broken. Jessica stood up, collecting her things. You were braver than I was, Lily. You fought back. I just hope someday I can do the same. She walked out, leaving Lily alone with her tea and the strange realization that Marcus hadn't just underestimated his wife. He'd underestimated every woman in his life. The baby came on a Tuesday in February, 3 weeks early but healthy. Lily labored for 14 hours with Nina holding one hand and her mother, who'd flown in from Seattle, holding the other. When the doctor finally placed the baby on her chest, Lily looked down at the tiny, perfect face and felt something crack open in her chest. She's beautiful, her mother whispered through tears. She looks like you, Nina added. Same determined chin. Lily named her Grace. For grace under pressure. For grace in the face of cruelty. For the grace to forgive herself for the years she'd spent believing Marcus's version of her worth. Marcus never came to the hospital. Never called. The first month of child support arrived via direct deposit exactly on time, and that was the only acknowledgement that he had a daughter. But Grace didn't need him. She had Lily, who worked from home now doing freelance curriculum development that paid twice what teaching had. She had Nina, who came over 3 times a week with food and terrible dad jokes that somehow always made Lily laugh. She had Henderson, who'd become an unlikely friend and occasionally stopped by with stuffed animals that Grace was too young to appreciate. She had a community. A family built from choice rather than obligation. 6 months after Grace was born, Lily was pushing a stroller through the farmer's market when she saw him. Marcus stood at a produce stand, alone, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. He looked older. Smaller somehow. Diminished. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. For a long second, they just stared at each other across the crowded market. Then Marcus's eyes dropped to the stroller. To Grace, who was awake and looking around at the world with wide, curious eyes. Something passed across his face. Regret maybe, or loss. But then it was gone, replaced by that familiar coldness. He turned away without a word and disappeared into the crowd. Lily stood there for a moment, one hand on the stroller handle, and realized she felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Not even pity. He was just a man she used to know. A man who'd made terrible choices and now lived with terrible consequences. And she was just a woman who'd survived him and built something better in the ruins he'd left behind. 1 year after the birthday party that had changed everything, Lily sat in her apartment late at night, Grace asleep in her crib, and opened her laptop. She'd been thinking about this for months. About all the women who'd reached out after her story went public, because of course it had gone public. Because Whitmore had talked to colleagues, and those colleagues had talked to reporters. And soon everyone knew about the man who'd served his pregnant wife divorce papers at his own birthday party and lost everything. Women had emailed her, deemed her, stopped her in grocery stores to share their own stories of marriages that had broken them, of men who'd taken everything and left them with nothing. And Lily had listened to every single one. Now she created a new document and started typing. Chapter 1. The day I stopped being afraid. She wrote about the birthday party, the divorce papers, the pregnancy test in her purse, the moment she decided to fight back instead of fold. She wrote for 3 hours, until her fingers cramped and her eyes burned, until she'd poured every painful memory onto the page. When she finally stopped, she had 15,000 words. The beginning of a book. A real book about surviving a marriage to a narcissist, about finding strength in the worst moments, about rebuilding when everything falls apart. She sent the draft to Henderson, who'd mentioned his sister was a literary agent. 3 days later, her phone rang. Lily? This is Catherine Henderson. I read your pages. When can we talk about representation? Marcus Chen's career never recovered. He bounced between contract positions for a year before eventually leaving California entirely. The last Lily heard, he was working at a startup in Austin, making a fraction of what he'd made at Sterling, living in a studio apartment and driving a used car. The stock options he'd tried to hide had vested right before his firing. Lily's share of them, combined with smart investments Henderson had recommended, meant she'd never have to worry about rent or food or electricity again. But more valuable than the money was what she'd learned. She'd learned that the cruelest thing you can do to someone who underestimates you is prove them catastrophically wrong. She'd learned that documentation is power, that loyalty from real friends matters more than status, and that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so good that you forget your enemy even exists. She'd learned that Grace wasn't just her daughter's name. It was a choice. The choice to walk away from bitterness, to forgive herself for the years she'd wasted, and to build something meaningful from the wreckage. The book, when it was published 18 months later, became a bestseller. Not because of scandal, though that helped, but because thousands of women recognized themselves in Lily's story. Recognized the pattern of being slowly diminished by someone who was supposed to love them. Recognized the moment of finally saying enough. And they reached out. They shared. They fought back. Grace was 2 years old the day Lily spoke at a conference for divorced women rebuilding their lives. Standing on stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, She thought about that moment at the birthday party when Marcus had handed her those papers with such confidence. He'd thought he was writing the ending of her story. Instead, he'd given her the beginning of something bigger than either of them. "The man I married tried to erase me," she told the audience. "He tried to make me small enough to disappear. But here's what he didn't understand. You can't erase someone who refuses to be silent. You can't diminish someone who knows their own worth. And you definitely can't destroy someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." The applause was thunderous. And that night, in her apartment with Grace asleep in her room and her book on the bestseller list and her life finally completely her own, Lily Chen understood something profound. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's becoming so strong, so successful, so genuinely happy that they become irrelevant. Marcus had tried to serve her an ending at that birthday party. Instead, she'd written herself a beginning. And if you followed this journey from betrayal to triumph, from humiliation to strength, then you already understand what so many people need to hear. Your worth is not determined by someone who couldn't see it. Your story doesn't end when someone cruel tries to write the last chapter. And sometimes, the worst thing that ever happens to you is actually the catalyst for becoming the person you were always meant to be. Don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because we all know someone fighting a battle nobody sees. And sometimes, knowing that survival is possible makes all the difference.